This is my son, little Eddie. He's learning how to not use his claws in greeting or in play, but he really likes using his claws. There's so much I want to say. So many things come up. I don't write anymore. It's too permanent. And people can quote you 5 years in the future or 10 years and say, you said this in December of 2021. So I'm holding you to that. And if you say anything that contradicts it between now and the next 5 years, you are proved to be a fake because you contradict yourself. Principle number 1, and don't record this. So many of you think that there's some special energy in satsang. And there really isn't. It's all in you. Everything you seek, everything you experience, everything you want, it's all existing in you now. But your mind and your body have to become accustomed to opening yourself up to new parts of yourself which you've not been able to see or experience because you've lived in a world of concepts which dictate how your reality has been and will be until you get rid of those ideas. Now, one of the most explosive experiences of my life happened when I was in love. And the stage was set to feel something extraordinary for months ahead of time. When I could palpably feel energies moving through my body in all directions, hands, arms, etc. I had seen the light of consciousness many years before, just by concentrating on the third eye and the light that one sees after doing that for a while. But the explosion came after feeling deep love for this woman for months. And as we communicated over the phone or Skype, the intensity grew. I had never known anyone as capable of experiencing large emotions as she. Most people, when they begin to experience the explosiveness of the fundamental powers and energies within oneself, get scared and they run away, shut down. I had one student email me that he met this woman that lights him up on fire. And he wanted me to tell him what to do, because all he could do was think of this woman and feel love for her. And he thought she loved him too, but he wasn't sure. But I can tell by the intensity of the feelings he was having. He was like a 17-year-old, deeply in love, gushing with love. My experience has been that when you feel intense love, you're very likely to drive the other person away, because the intensity of your emotions becomes frightening to the other, who is not used to experiencing such strong emotions. So I told him, the only way your relationship is going to last is if you slow down and follow her lead, not your own. Your own is to throw yourself at her feet. And that may work 1 out of 25 times for a while. But when similarly strong emotions are aroused in her, she may not be one of those people that can tolerate strong emotions of attachment and love and surrender. Jesus. And I had been in psychotherapy for 8 years, I think, with Eric Reitz back in the 70s and 80s. And Eric said, almost invariably, these intensely strong feeling relationships don't last. They explode. The intensity gets too much for one partner or the other, and they run away. And the other person is wondering, what happened? Because the intensity of emotions that they allowed themselves did not match intensity of emotions the other person did. He said it was very rare, very, very rare for two people engaged in intense emotionally relationships to last as a relationship. So I told this guy, cool it, stifle yourself, follow her lead, and just give her enough of that positive feedback and looking at her and feeling love for her with that lovesick look on your face. Only as much as she can tolerate. I was assuming that he was opening faster than she was. But in any event, somebody had to control the degree and rapidity of opening. Otherwise, that relationship was doomed. But with me, I felt, because of the distance between us, it was all over the phone or on Skype, we could build up tremendous amounts of emotion. And it was not intolerable to each of us. In fact, her words of loving were so deep that something snapped inside of me. And for the first time in my life, I felt loved by a woman. And something broke and fell into place. And my love increased until all that I could feel was love. Like this guy I'm talking about, but probably much more fully and more constantly than he is capable of at this moment. And I realized that that great love I was feeling was really totally my own. She was only the trigger. I was the source. I was the source of all that intense love. And then one day, I had my God realization experience where the intensity had been building for, several months until I had that identification with love, that I was love itself. Every particle of my being was love. And a few days or weeks later, I had the experience of God arising in me and through me as the life force. And that I also was the central portal for another aspect of the life force. I felt the transcendent God in me as another aspect of the life force in my own personal human manifestation of the life force as separate but the same. I was a little God as opposed to that great God that appeared within me and through me. Well, that relationship didn't last. It too became too intense. She ran away, only to get captured by Swami Chaitananda for 5 years, where she pined for him for 5 years because he had little to do with her, and she could feel all these big emotions without the fear of Chaitananda opening up as she had opened up. She went through all kinds of jealousy things because there were so many worshiping women around Chaitananda already at the ashram. But 95% of the people that contact me asking for advice or help are there because of emotional problems. Most recently, someone contacted me and said, I practice trying to worship myself as the life force, but I get so easily distracted by all of these emotions that are miserable arise in me and cause me much pain. He didn't describe them, but I can imagine what they are. For most people, it's that they have a very fragmented personality. Within the same personality, they find various aspects of their personality conflicting and wanting different things. One wants peace and stability. Another wants intense surrender. Another wants intense love. Another wants intense spiritual experiences. Another wants merely safety. Another wants to leave the world so that they don't suffer anymore the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune. And all of these different entities or fragmentary entities inside compete for the intention, you might say, of the centralized personality core, an executive ego, so to speak, the one that holds all the others together and provides the basis for one's sense of self. And that one is tossed about, trying to contain the desires and fears and aspirations of all the various parts of our personality. Really, it's hard to manage all of these different personalities. One way is to have one overriding interest in your life, like the concept of self-realization. And you do everything possible in your life around that particular topic. So your life becomes integrated around self-realization. And that's all you think of all day long. For years, you just read books on self-realization. You read books by various gurus and historical figures, and you read the sutras, and you read Advaita texts or the Shakti texts. You go to workshops, whatever you do, you know what it is like. Practice meditation. You have your own little altar, maybe a meditation room. And you go in there 3 times a week, practice for a few hours. And all the while wondering, what is the world of my own guru like inside of him or her? What is her subjectivity like? How does mine compare? And if you have one centralizing influence like this, it really helps to focus your life. It simplifies it. The other aspects of your ego or your personality just have to fall in line under the one you've chosen to be your life's work, which may be self-realization or God realization or enlightenment, whatever that means to you. And usually nobody knows what it means. They just strive for it as a concept. And then over a period of time, the unused aspirations within you sort of dry up. And if you don't obtain those big spiritual breakthroughs, the rest of you dries up too. You're so used to drying up and focusing on one concept or goal that you can't see anything else in your life. You can't feel the pull of the life force inside of you because You never discovered the life force because you were searching for enlightenment. And you didn't know that enlightenment included the life force. I know you read somebody says that life force is what it's all about, but that's only one concept out of many concepts in spirituality. So this guy that wrote me said, I try to practice worshiping myself as the life force. But soon, painful, angry, and other emotions bother me and hinder me and distract me till I no longer know what I'm doing. He gets off into distracted mind, and that's true for all beginners. And you can be a beginner in spirituality for 20 or 30 years because you've always nibbled at the crumbs of spirituality, the books. Look at Facebook. People that are into spirituality, how they post Nisargadatta quotes. And there's 132 comments afterwards of other people that like or don't like that quote or tell you about somebody else's quote. And people can spend all day for months posting quotes on Facebook and then getting into fights with those that argue with you. And your whole life can you be eaten up in these, eating the foodstuffs that are dropped on the ground in the combat you're having with other people whose ideas you challenge or who challenge your ideas and your concepts. But where is there peace in this? And is it really peace you want? Or is it really that concept you want of enlightenment or self-realization? You can't learn self-realization from a book. You can't learn enlightenment from concepts. You have to totally escape from concepts and do an inward journey, which means not to be so focused on the outside world anymore, making money in it, getting a partner in it, getting sex in it, getting drugs, alcohol, or wealth, or getting a house, or getting security. It's not about getting anything in the external world, no matter how much that satisfies your interest for security. It's all going to be taken away from you in the end. So why not let it be taken away from you now? Unless if something's taken away from you now, you lose other things that your progress in the worldly things promise to yield. Can you let go of your need for security in the world? Hardly. Hardly. Would you give up your need for security in the world to enjoy God, direct communion with God, with the life force? You don't even know what that means because you haven't experienced the life force, most of you, or many of you. The life force is very deep within us. You have to spend years going through the level of feeling your body and what the body feels like from the inside, where your toes and feet and genitals and gut and chest and head and neck all feel like from the inside. You have to get through years and years of repressed emotions created by childhood blocks and all these other kinds of things. And you get weary about dealing with emotions all the time because it's so hard. It seems never ending. And it is for a long while, never ending. And you think this is merely a distraction from God realization and spirituality, but it's something you got to do. You got to let all of those emotions work their way to the surface. And you have to re-own them. All the traumas, all the emotions. And soon you're no longer thoughtful and calculating. You're just raging emotions. And you have to do that for a while to loosen the beast within you. Because that beast of emotions covers up all the chi energies in the body. And then you get fascinated with the energies in the body. You're at a deeper level now because you're actually dwelling in emptiness. And the body feelings are just there within the emptiness, not stirring you in any way. And the same with the emotions. You've worked your way through all of the emotions, and you're just an empty void with these emotions and sensations and energies happening within you. And at this point, if you're lucky, rather than many different kinds of emotions and feelings and energies being circulating within you, like a kaleidoscope that you look at and it keeps changing, changing, changing. God comes to you and shows you who you really are at the very deepest level. You're the life force. You were born into this world, not knowing who or what you were, becoming a little baby, going through all the stages of growing up, taking on all the different responsibilities and the different roles of being a kindergartner, a 3-year-old, 5-year-old, a 10-year-old, 15-year-old with the adolescent problems of sexuality, desiring relationship, and then later on of perhaps becoming a cop or a soldier for a man and a nurse for a woman and all these other roles that are allocated to us that we think we can go into. And we spend years working on these roles of going to college, getting an education, and fitting into some pattern, like being a doctor for Veselina, or being wealthy so you can feel security, or seeking enlightenment, not knowing what it is, and subjecting yourself to all kinds of tortures to get the things you want. But when you find the life force, exploding in you, it's different from all the energies you felt up to this point in your spiritual career. It's finding a living God within you. The life force has a seeming personality of its own. It has light and enormous power. You've never felt power like you feel when God realizes himself in you. There's light and there's energy. But most of all, the most strong thing you feel is the intensity of the power of the life force acting through you and in you. For all intents and purposes, for a short period of time, you are God. You take on that role. It seems so natural to have this power coming through you. And after that, you're never the same. You're never the same. You know deep down inside that really you're not the body anymore. Your consciousness, your spirit. And at first, some people think that that means something in spiritual terms. I've become an avatar. I've become an enlightened one. I've become an angel. I've become a god or a goddess. And that's a role you have to live through for a while. But at this point, after this point, you're finally safe because you're integrated. You know who and what you are, essentially. This power that you've allowed to be unleashed within yourself. And you realize it's always been there, but you've been looking the wrong way for what you want in life. You've been looking outwards into botany or economics or marriage and family counseling or psychology or astronomy or accounting, looking for your life's meaning in a career or in a relationship, when you find out that life's meaning is recognized when you find God realization inside of yourself. God realization. But really, this fundamental step is only the first. You finally come into your own. You finally escape beyond the mundane world. When you're deeply feeling into God realization, you're no longer of the world you had lived in, that tiny world of physical functioning and body functioning in society or in love relationships or whatever thing you were surrounded by. You're freed from all of that by the infinite power of God within you. You're freed from the fear of being a bobbling bottle on the waters of your unconscious and conscious mind and emotions, and all the other stuff. And the fickleness of the external world and the circumstances it throws you in. Then you begin to see things very interesting. When you examine yourself in your everyday life, all these things you've gone through, which seemed real before, no longer seem so real because you've seen through the world and found God within. But there are two aspects to God realization. Experience yourself as the life force, and you're witnessing both the world and God as consciousness. You're both these things. And when you realize this, you can begin to explore both consciousness and the life force. You're no longer looking at the objects in your worldview, the emotions, the energies, the objects, automobiles, streetcars, the cityscape, the politics. Instead, you start looking directly at consciousness, that substance which holds everything together. And you'll see that consciousness itself varies over time and through time, from the morning to the evening. And over the years, things change too. Time for a 6-year-old is very different, and for a 60-year-old, and even more different for an 80-year-old. When you're young, it's a barrier keeping you from attaining what you want to attain. And it seems to take forever. But 6 years when you're 70 is a very brief time indeed, because it's taking things away from you and not adding things. And now you're entering a world because your world is different now. What you focus on now are nuances within the voidness of consciousness. How it stretches here and contracts there. How it opens up to hold emotions or closes down to preclude the feeling of body pain. You watch consciousness itself. And at first, you don't know how to watch consciousness itself. But it has two aspects. What you see, hear, and feel, and the source. The subjective self. And you dig into that subjective self. And you keep learning about yourself. There's no method anymore. You see that all method was a waste of time, a conceptual way of approaching self-knowledge by doing this exercise and that exercise. But now you know that the only method really that ever works is to be still, relax into yourself, and accept and honor whatever arises. If you had known this from the beginning, like this guy who wrote me, he asked me, is there any methods to reach this state? Well, the methods are legion, and they all blind you to certain aspects. You can practice emptiness meditation. You can practice focusing on a mandala or on sounds. You can practice self-inquiry either using words like, who am I? Or say, follow the I thought, like Robert asks, whatever that means. Because I learned by following the I thought that thoughts were like tiny little clouds that were outside of me. And they were out there all the time, knocking on my door of consciousness to become aware of them. And each one of us is constructed in a certain way to only receive certain kinds of thoughts. And you know, you practice of watching your thoughts over the years, you'll see how intensely one focuses on the mind. When the shit that comes up is not worth paying any attention to. What is worth paying attention to lies underneath those thoughts. And it lies in feeling one's own body, feeling one's own emotions, feeling the chi energies underneath that, the flowing of the chi energies, and then getting down to the realization of the life force, God realization. It's another name I give it. And when you discover that, the life force within you that plays through you, you've reached the place where you're truly coming into your own as a self-realized being. Because that is the manifest self. But Robert puts his focus on the unmanifest self, the transcendent subject that watches and experiences everything, but itself is not able to be seen, felt, heard, or tasted, because it's outside of existence. Its manifestation is found in the life force, which is the emptiness come alive as God within you. And once you realize this life force, nothing else is important except to find the source of this God realization, which is the total emptiness. And even deeper than emptiness is the nothingness. But this is so far beyond the ordinary person in life who is just bothered by the trials and tribulations presented in everyday life. Relationship problems, money problems, property problems, sociology problems, news, politics. Because inside it's like the vastness of a great iceberg, with the movement inside being very different from the movement that you've paid attention to all your life of being a human being. That's why you no longer consider yourself a human being. You're something else. You're a spiritual entity. And you're always aware of it within you, the life force. And now you're also aware of the patterns of consciousness, how consciousness stretches or contracts, how you get scared or something like that, and it contracts to just your body and your immediate region around you in your room or the house. Well, after you relax for a while, consciousness expands to the limits of the universe, and you're fascinated by the stars. But not when somebody's pointing a good gun at you. Then it contracts to an immediate personal situation. There are no rules in spirituality that you could follow. I say the one thing you could strive for is God realization. But that doesn't mean anything to you until you experience it. So what do you do in order to entice the God realization experience within yourself? And that's when the many types of meditation and spiritual practices come into play, as you exhaustively look at one aspect of your experience after another. With mantra meditation, you're trying to find that sweetness of music magnified to a great intensity in yourself, which will give you entree to God realization. The same thing with pursuing love, love of the guru, love of a woman or a man. Most people have a love that's fixated just in the physical world of sex, holding and touching, having children, having a family. And they don't use the love that they feel to allow to come to full intensity, where it takes you way beyond the human. It stretches your heart until it can burst forth with God realization. So I tell people, love yourself or love somebody else, love a tree, love a dog, love a cat, love a person with all the intensity you can muster. But the intent now isn't to obtain the favor of that object in your life or to be able to cuddle with your cat at night. It's to be able to get in contact with the inner states, most states that are awakening when these kinds of relationships take place. Because it's all about you. All of these states are already in you. That deep devotion is there already. That deep surrender is there already. That deep love is already there in you as you. But until you leave the human world and all of its concepts behind, you won't be able to feel it, experience it, or live it. That's why you have to take the long, long path of just learning how to feel step by step, beginning with feeling your body as a physical entity, feeling emotions, feeling love, feeling surrender, all of these things, feeling the energies, feeling the life force. And it takes decades. Yeah, I know there's some young people that realize certain aspects of enlightenment very quickly in their lives, and they may become teachers. But you watch their lives, and they're using their spiritual powers to satisfy the normal ego desires of the unenlightened, of having sex, multiple relationships, wealth. And you have spiritual teachers that wrap themselves in beautiful clothes and rituals, and you address them as Guruji or whatever it is. You bow to them and you send salutations to them and you worship them. And all the while, they're using your love to build themselves up through their adulation, your adulation. And soon you've been eaten by another cult. And maybe you have to stay there for 10 or 15 years or more before you free yourself from the cult. The only freedom comes in knowing yourself. And that only comes from exploring yourself without methods, without goals, without concepts, just being open to your innards. So self-realization really means to experience everything about yourself without methods. Because if you do methods, you're going to be limited by the methods and they're going to slow you down. But if you just learn to relax and let whatever arise to arise and to feel it, to love whatever arises, to worship whatever arises, for as long as it takes until you realize God within yourself, the life force, and how life force works with consciousness to create all of experience. And then you wonder too, what is this all about? What's the reason for being alive? Who is alive? And if you're alive, what's the meaning of death? Why is the life force always cut off in the middle somehow? Is it just pointless manifestation of the life force for the sake of manifesting, or is there a purpose to it? And you can begin to think like that for a long period of time as you search for it. I had a friend in college. He was amazingly brilliant. And his only goal in life was to understand the nature of consciousness. He moved away to be with a woman. And for 10 years or so, I hadn't heard of him. And the woman contacted me and said that he was dying. of a particular kind. Oh, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. I had no idea what it is. Neither. I don't know now what it is. And I talked to him. And he said his only regret in life was never having found what the nature of consciousness is. He was still trying to define it, I think, rather than living it. He was still trying to fill it out with meaning and concepts so he could teach it to others, or at least know it for himself. That was his goal, continuous goal. And he died without ever having obtained it. You must know that about yourself too. And then come to the conclusion that life without intensive self-investigation isn't worth living, because you just live through then your programming, your education, family imprints, goals imposed upon you by society or your parents. When in fact, you're so much more than that. And you can only find that so much more when you let go of the world. And instead, look and feel into yourself. You turn your attention 180 degrees, and it just rests on you until the day comes when the life force shows itself to you. And you recognize that as that huge force within you, that godness, which is playing through you. Well, you're still there separately, almost as a witness, watching God act through you, and maybe adding an assent to that life force's actions within you by saying, yes, that is also me. That's what I desire, whatever the life force is providing to me. I really like your backdrop, Enrique. It's really impressive. It's like something Osho would do to impress his students. I'm going to have to get something like that to put behind me and maybe have it glow during my performances. Well, so everybody falls down and worships my image that they have of me in the moment.
And actually, it's a picture of the floor of a site, a hidden site in the woods nearby. It's a site that it was built by a French lady with the help of some Colombians and guided by an American shaman some 30 years ago. And the shaman selected the specific site, the building, the directions of the building, and the building of this floor, which is full of crystals. And it's a healing, it looks like a uterus. And on the floor, there's that mandala right there. So I go there every week or so, or 2 weeks. Actually, I was there this morning. I go there to meditate. It's in the middle of the woods. It's hidden. It's beautiful. And so I decided to take a picture of it and put it as my background sometimes. So it's beautiful.
Now, see, you could write a book about that experience and put all of your spiritual experiences in it And you could give it any name you want and it'd be a bestseller. And pretty soon you could become the biggest guru in South America.
Well, that sounds good.
Anybody else have anything to say?
Yeah, I just want to say, Edgy, we got to get you some of those robes that Osho used to wear. That's what you're missing.
I thought it was something like that. You know, 30 or 40 years ago, I would have done something like that to adapt that kind of trick thing to draw students. Unfortunately, or fortunately now, I don't care. Whoever comes, comes. And they get what they get. And I don't have to make any effort to go out and find the robes, wash them and iron them, and to get a better camera for satsang and to set myself up on a high seat and only have a picture of me going during satsang. All that I can say is now I'm happy because I don't have anything to do anymore. I'm happy. I don't care who comes or who doesn't come. Those who come will be able to benefit, and those who don't come or who have left weren't able to benefit. You know, I hear so many times from people that nobody seems to stay long with you, Ed. Why is that? Because you're a shitty teacher, which is the usual subcontext that they're putting in there. Or if you do this one thing, you'll get more people to stay. But Robert never did any of that stuff. He knew people mostly drifted into and out of spirituality. They were drifters. Very few people stayed. And he said, my goal is to have 10 people who stay, no matter what I do. They recognize something in me, which is part of them, which they find valuable or want to be around. And they stay. The strange thing is, one by one, a lot of these people have obtained something very deep. And they drift away. And it's okay because they found what they wanted to find, at least for now. I take no pride in it. It's them. It's their doing, their karma, their life. And I'm only here as a, what do you call it? I don't know what they call it, like a building that's a what? No, that's a different concept. I'm like here a stupa, where they come and sit in meditation for a few days a week, and then they go on their way to another stupa or holy river somewhere. My vessel sank. I'm now vesselless. Speaking of vessel, there's Vesselina. Is she off preparing food right now? Is that why the picture disappeared? Like she usually does? Vaselina, are you there? There she is. She's still there. Do you have anything to say? Have I talked you out of being a doctor today yet?
No, not particularly today. Maybe in general you have. I don't know. I just forgot about things and felt relieved for a while.
Sunagi. That's as close as I can come to your name. What have you to say?
You speak to me?
Yes.
Okay, because I'm Rika, I already told you, in Hungary. Okay, so it's easier for you to say.
Okay. If I can remember that, but that's something I have to remember.
Okay, I would like to change the name, but I don't know how to do it. So I wish to find this, how to say, this God realization, this life force, what you are, oh my God, I forgot to speak in English after satsang. So I'm waiting for this experience.
You're waiting for what?
For the experience of this excuse me, none of the English words came in my mind. Waiting for God realization. Okay, I try to say it very simple. I'm waiting for God realization. I wait for the life force, etc.
That's the only thing you can really do is kind of invite it by being open. Being open to all experiences that arise in you. And sort of wait for it without waiting for it, though. It's important not to wait for it because that will make it not happen. But to be waiting for whatever happens, whatever arises. Accept everything that arises as an offering by God to you to go deeper into yourself. If sickness comes, rejoice. If a new animal comes into your life, rejoice. If something is lost and you feel grief, rejoice, because it's revealing a different aspect of life, taking away. Eric, everything you experience here in satsang that seems so wonderful is already in you. Satsang, for whatever reason, just allows you to experience it for the first time. But it's always been there. It's just that you haven't looked at it or felt it. It's not me. It's all in you. All that I do is offer a context within which to feel yourself and experience yourself. Enrique, you're a natural for being a teacher. Frank probably left because he has work to do on Monday through Wednesday. He can only stay for a short time. Anybody else have anything to say?
I would just say to Rika that her surname is so beautiful that she should be like Oprah or Adele and just change it to Rika and post yourself here as Rika. Don't even put your first name up because it'll simplify the whole thing. It's really a beautiful surname and you should just, it's you, and you shouldn't have to apprise us of the fact that it's so hard to say because it is beautiful. And
It's good advice.
What you
Good
just
advice.
shared is beautiful.
Yeah, you'll become one of these one name celebrities.
Like Ed.
Shit.
Sorry, Edgy.
Edgy, I just wanted to say thank you. And yes, we're all one burning heart of the self, and we've all created this moment of grace together, but you are such a blessing and a gem of the prajna wisdom, and you are in a sense a light bearer of that, and we get to benefit from that, and it's beautiful. You know, like hordes of people visited Ramana because he had that magnetic quality, and he had such a gigantic heart, which was everyone's heart, but some of us haven't realized that yet. But the grace flows to all of us here. And yes, it's our grace, it's your grace. We're all in this beautiful show together, this divine dance, but you have such a big part of that as well. And thank you. And for those of you that don't know, I send these emails to Edgy and I just throw myself at his feet, you know, and I say all these things. And he says, he'll say something like, why I ought to wash your mouth out with soap. And it's so beautiful. And I love that aspect of you as well, because you don't give a shit. That's what is so beautiful about your where you are and where you've arrived.
Well, Eric,
at.
it does mean something to me to have someone come that actually comes alive like you are. You're like a 500-watt light bulb that's lighting up, and it's wonderful to see. I do realize it, how wondrous your experience is. And I just hope you keep going and going and going instead of at some point getting waylaid by something happening to you or whatever. Just keep going. You're doing so well. And officially, Rike, from now on, you're Rike. Like Madonna.
Rika.
Huh?
Reka. Reka.
Reka.
Yes. Oh my God. Mm-hmm.
Well, then you have to put those pronunciation signs over the letters so we know how to pronounce it.
It's like a rake that you do the lawn with, a rake. Reka.
Just remember Anna East, how much fun you had with that name. Where are they now?
Yes,
What
where are they
does-
now?
What does Reka mean? What does your name mean?
I think in Russian it's river.
In Bulgarian too.
It's what?
River.
But we pronounce it reka.
No, that's you pronounce it well.
Yeah, thanks.